Now, the next speaker, and I'm not the person to introduce him. I hand over to Elaine.
Yes, so thank you. It's my very special pleasure to introduce Andrew Wilson. Andrew Wilson is the co-director of the Leeder Centre for Health Policy, Economics and Data at the University of Sydney. He used to be the chair of the PBAC in Australia. He was a member of the committee doing the HTA policy and methods review in Australia, and they submitted their recommendations to the Australian government last year. And he is now the chair of the advisory committee for the implementation of these recommendations and the results of the review. So Andrew is really very best positioned to give us some insights from his point of view from Australia. Thank you, Andrew.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, excellent.
Okay, thank you. So look, I thought the most valuable thing that I could do after having a discussion with Elaine about this was focus on a very small aspect of the issues that you're talking about, and that is the thoughts that we've given around performance measures for efficient, patient-centric HTA. The Australian government has a strategic agreement with Medicines Australia, which is the main group that represents not the main but not the only group representing pharma in Australia. And there are a number of things within that strategic agreement, which goes from 2022 to 2027, including the commitments to the recently completed independent review of HTA processes and also the development of an enhanced patient engagement process, which went on in parallel in 2023 and 2024 and both reported about at the same time. But as part of that agreement, there was a agreement that there would be a set of key performance indicators agreed to between the two parties to measure the reduced time to PBS listing, to Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme listing, and including the time from TGA registration to PBS listing within the term of the agreement, with the notion that this could be monitored over this period of time. And there were two sets of measures that were identified. There were measures in the control of the medicines industry, such as time to regulatory and reimbursement applications compared to overseas jurisdictions. And then there were measures which were seen to be in the control of the government, such as the time taken to assess the applications. There were metrics defined for this, and when you get my presentation shared, you'll see one example of the metrics for PBS, for Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme processing improvements. And I guess one of the things that came out of that, and I think an important message for the night, was there has been ongoing discussions, ongoing dispute about the times which are actually listed within those metrics. So the issue of arriving at and defining very clearly what your metrics are about. As already mentioned, we had a very extensive review of the whole HTA policy and process environment, which was completed last year, and you can see that online. And within that, there were sort of 7 themes of activity identified, and I'm not going to go through them all tonight, but they related to streamlining processes, improving stakeholder engagement, adapting to emerging technologies, value-based assessments, efficiency and coordination, expanding the use of real-world data, and capacity building to be able to do this in a timely way. There was a specific recommendation 15, about jointly owned performance targets, and this was hotly debated within the review committee, which included representatives from government, consumers, and industry and clinicians. But we agreed on a set of what we thought were measures which would make sense to people who weren't necessarily familiar with the HTA process, that we called sort of headline performance targets. So an example of that was that at least 90% of listings for the pharmaceutical benefit scheme would occur within 6 months of the listing, the registration for products demonstrating superiority and submitted under the TGA and PBAC parallel processing pathway, which is a very efficient pathway for looking at new products. And that for ones not submitted under the TGA parallel processing, that there would be a target of 90% within 12 months. Importantly, going with that, we recommended that there be the production of some annual summary documents that transparently indicated why these measures were not met on an individual medicine by medicine basis. And we proposed some elements how those might be summarised within 4 different stages of PBAC submission, PBAC consideration, commercial negotiation and implementation of the recommendation in relation to that. And the aim was that these would be as transparent as we possibly could to people who were naive. And that comes to my sort of final observations around this. The question was asked was, what was the perspective that we were taking in relation to this? And we were taking a perspective where we tried to be particularly patient-centric in all of our recommendations. And our patient centricity, therefore, is around providing timely access to new medicines and vaccines and ensuring that patients have greater involvement in decision-making for medicines and access. So for the EU, the new arrangements, the new HTA performance indicators, my suggestion is that the monitoring of the impact of the new HTA framework on patient access to innovative therapies, including the time it takes for new treatments to become available after this joint HTA, has to be one of your key performance indicators. And the other thing is, in terms of what the details of those measures might be, I just caution that achieving an agreement among all the stakeholders here is not necessarily going to be as straightforward as it might seem in terms of reaching agreement about what those KPIs might be, but also what the benchmarks for them might be. So thank you, and I apologise that you weren't able to see my slides.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Andrew. And if there are any questions to Andrew, feel free to ask him. Now he will also then get off the screen. I have perhaps one more comment than a question. You saw my initial PICO scheme on EU HTA, and in the end, it's a historic comparison, because we compare what we are going to do versus the history across Europe with the staggered and fragmented healthcare system. Now, when I saw your slides, and I had the privilege to see them already in advance, I thought one additional paper could also be a head-to-head versus Australia, because criteria are very well set and there are clear ambitions. It's not a randomized experience, but it's, let's say, it's a living control to some extent. Now, are there any additional questions to Andrew Wilson? Otherwise, let me thank you again very much.
Thank you all. I'll leave you to it.
Thanks.